Hey everyone, I'm MoiDawg,
And I'm Karmakut, and welcome to Command Comms.
the podcast where we talk about everything and anything related to tactical shooters. All right, well, first off, welcome back everyone. Thank you so much for coming back to episode 2. As you know, last week we had our inaugural episode talking about the Squad 1.0 release. And Karmakut, how do you think that went?
I think it's been great. I really am excited to see all the positive comments, and I'm really happy with how that first episode came out, and hopefully it can only get better from here. But yeah, so as you guys might have known from the end of last episode, the squad release episode, we were planning on talking about Hell Let Loose and Postscriptum today, but we're actually probably going to push that back to next week so that we can talk about Beyond the Wire today.
Wait, Beyond the Wire? What are you talking about? Did a brand new game come
I
out?
know, right? We had everything planned for Hell Let Loose and Postscriptum,
Just had
and
to mess it
boom.
up.
Yeah, just out of nowhere, honestly. I wasn't really prepared for Beyond the Wire to make that big of a splash. Were you?
No, yeah, it definitely came a little bit out of left field. I know there's been some teasers every once in a while, but you really didn't. I was surprised at one how big of a release it really is, and how many people were really looking forward to it. There were servers up and everything like that. So it was, man, it's great to see, to be honest, but definitely took me by surprise.
Honestly, quite a big deal. I wasn't really expecting it, and I'm pretty excited, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we do jump into that, let's talk about a couple of announcements. Number one, we're now on Spotify, Google, and YouTube, and we also have opened up the Discord.
Yes, the Discord. So if you guys, I know we had a bunch of people post on the YouTube comments. So thank you guys for posting a couple suggestions and some things that, hey, maybe could you talk about this on the podcast? Or I know some of y'all have mentioned the whoosh intro. So we no promises what we're going to do for this little intro sound, but I think we're going to try to work on something to, make it a little bit more personalized, get a good command comms feel. But I appreciate, and I know Karma appreciates all the feedback. So hopefully continue that on YouTube, but also the Discord link should be everywhere. So feel free, hop on in the Discord and come talk with us.
But let's jump straight into the meat of today's podcast, the Beyond the Wire release. What do we think of it? What do we think is fun and the negatives about it? Where do we think the future for the game is? And is it worth it at its $35 price point?
So kicking it right off, I know we're kind of just hinting on this about how big of a release it really was. At starting off just with OWI, they typically have really good trailers. You kind of have an idea of the type of game OWI is going to release. Did that, I guess, get that feel for you, Karma, that you just saw the trailer, you got in game? Did it feel like an actual early access release for you?
So this is a really interesting note just because we have seen a similar launch like Beyond the Wire, such as Postscriptum, also using the off-world core. And I think because they have that connection to off-world industries as well as the resources, like I do believe Scott Tobin, who is the soundtrack developer for both Postscriptum and Squad, also did some of the Beyond the Wire tracks. These games that come out using the off-world core have a lot of, I guess, polish to them, more so than other indie games that come out of the blue. So I think that's definitely a strength that both Postscriptum and Beyond the Wire have. And it definitely comes out feeling a little bit more developed, I think, than other games in that same genre. What do you think?
Yeah, I think definitely on the polish, I think that's really where it comes to light that it's an OWI game. It's
Hmm.
some of these other early access games, as you rightly put, they're really early access. And this, I don't want to say it felt like a squad mod because it's not, but I think there's some truth to that because of how much of a game it really felt like it was. And you get in there, you're familiar with the mechanics, you're familiar with certain animations, the UI. I mean, it's all different. It's all its own unique Beyond the Wire stuff, but it really felt like a relatively finished game, which is very good to see because World War One isn't kind of something you just want to jump in and kind of half make and half put out there because a first impression for a World War One game can be really tough. If you miss it, I know Verdun way back in the day, I thought it was kind of just a gimmick. It was kind of cool. I kind of had fun with it, and then I just forgot about it. And then when you talk about something like Battlefield 1, that really just hit hard with a really amazing trailer and had some good Battlefield feel to it. You have different impressions that stick with you for a long time. And now this one comes out, and I got to say, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun, and I think it has to be said, just for the people who who don't know too much about Beyond the Wire. It is released in its first week of early access, so we're not even at full release yet, right? So it's really cool to see that this game that's come out has a lot of features. The release, as far as I'm concerned, was very smooth. We didn't have like insane server crashes or optimization or bugs, right? There was nothing obscenely glaring in the release, so it was relatively smooth, which is, pretty much all you can really hope for as a development studio when you're launching that first week. So I think they did a really good job there in making sure that their product was playable. As far as content, going back to that note that it is early access, I think there's a good chunk of content there. You'll get a lot of enjoyment out of playing the game in its current state, but we're still like in the very early, baby crawling ages or phase of Beyond the Wire. So hopefully it grows and it gets more content and it gets better and better and better. But I gotta say, this release for Beyond the Wire, I don't think it could have gone better for them.
Yeah, I think it's baby crawling. I do agree, but hey, this baby is moving too. Like it's this thing. I'm just surprised because when you think of one Squad, Squad is very slow paced compared to Beyond the Wire,
Hmm.
and Squad is obviously not as slow paced as something like Arma, but Beyond the Wire I thought was going to give me a really just, bolt action. I'm in a trench, I fire, I'm in a trench, I fire. And this thing, I mean, it has all of the, I guess the feel of Squad that I like, but you're not moving around. You're not you're not basically taking, a walking simulator from point to
Hmm.
point. You're constantly in the action. And that was, I think, my initial impression and what surprised me. Mechanics, obviously there's some bugs and everything every once in a while, but I didn't have any real big issues with trying to find something to do in game, which just looking at it, I think that was one of my biggest questions of, am I actually going to be like fighting, or are we going to be standing behind a trench?
Right. I think you touched on something that's like really, really interesting, right? Is because it's using the off-world core, right? It does have a couple of those, squad kind of moments where you're feeling those UI or those elements that are kind of being reused. But there is, like you said, a lot that is different about this game. The whole pacing structure of Beyond the Wire is so different from Squad. And I think that is going to be one of the biggest, I guess, criticisms, or one of its not flaws, but one of the things that it is going to be looked at, and it is going to be kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
You say it as you said criticism and flaw. So to me, we haven't even talked about this. Hey, all full
Yeah,
transparency,
we
podcast listeners. This is our first time we're actually talking about this. Uh, so do you not like the pacing?
No, I do like the pacing. I just think that there are certain things in Beyond the Wire that it does remind you a lot about Squad, but also it does a good job of setting itself apart from Squad. The game
Yep.
does feel different, but it also feels the same. So I'm having a really hard time describing that, because it's something that I don't really experience too often in sequels to video games or prequels to video games. Usually when you play a game that's related to another game in some fashion in development, it has certain things that you can go back and say, oh, they took that from Squad, they took this from Squad. But when you look at Beyond the Wire and you look at Squad, the things that they share, the things that are in common, are not really essential features. It's kind of like the small UI elements, right? There are certain
Yep.
things in the game that are like, oh, this is totally, something that's based off the off-world core. But when you get to playing it, the big features, the thing that the game is really trying to hone in and actually sell to you, it's a completely different experience. So it's this same but different kind of experience.
Same but different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's like really unique, and I think it's different because Postscriptum and Squad, when you look at those, because they're both using the off-road core as well, you can really see where the games kind of start to mesh a little bit too closely. Because Squad and Postscriptum play relatively the same. The main difference in gameplay there is the bolt action or the weaponry, right? So that's the main pacing difference there. But when you look at Beyond the Wire, they've really gone leaps and bounds to try to say, hey, we want you to play this game differently. We don't want you to walk around, and we don't want you to set up these flanks and have it just be a World War I reskin of Squad. We want this to be its own unique experience. And I think they've done a really good job doing that. I think they still have a lot to improve on as far as like improving that experience and encouraging it. But I think that mass charge, like melee combat system that they're going for right now, it's unique enough to set itself apart from the current games. So we'll see where that goes, and we'll see how much they can actually put into that kind of, play space, because it does need some more tweaking. But that's my current take. Same, but different. What about you? Like, I know you said before it doesn't have the exact same things, like Squad doesn't play the same, but are there certain things that you realize that's like, hey, this is the off-road core, and do you like that, or is it different enough that you can have a different experience?
Well, so I thought this was going to be a complaint at first. And if you guys are listening to this, you haven't played, or maybe you haven't looked into it, there's no tickets in Beyond the Wire, which is huge for an OWI game. That's, yeah, almost unheard of, right? You always have a ticket system. And so it starts to pull almost an element of like Hell Let Loose, where you still have that hardcore ishness in the game, but you don't have tickets. And I think that, when we're trying to focus, I think you phrased it well. It looks like off-world core, but they want you to experience something different. And the World War One gameplay loop that they're really trying to push you towards is this wave of just endless bodies rushing against the trench, getting fought back,
Mm-hmm.
rushing back over the trench, and hey, you finally got a foothold, and now you hold that trench, and then maybe you get pushed back. This tug of war of just mass bodies and people and just chaos. And it's not I struggle in saying arcadey, because there are elements of arcadiness in it, because there's no tickets, you can just die and respawn, but there's a real hardcore element in it that just it's very, when you die and you feel it, and you give up and you just try to go again. But it's a very, I can't think of a game that I've honestly felt so inclined just to give up and then to charge headfirst into something I know that's going to kill me. And I'm trying to think of, even I used to play a lot of Battlefield. Even at those things, you're really not you're really not trying to die, because you see it at the end of the game. You see your kills, you see your deaths, and even in Beyond the Wire, you see your kills and your deaths. But it's like they've created this sense of, for the greater good, like to get to the trench, it doesn't matter. Just everybody spawn, everyone just rush into it. And when you play it, you get it. I could tell though, as maybe you might have seen this as well. I could tell though, from people who are watching the stream or something, they there was some hesitation of a lot of postscriptum and squad players that are saying, yo, this is too respawny, this is
Mm-hmm.
too
Mm-hmm.
arcadey, this is too, anything like that. But it's, when you play it, it kind of makes sense. Am I crazy?
No, I totally agree with you. I think, like, looking at a couple games that have come out, Hell Let Loose, like you said, no tickets, and it does this great job of giving you a war feel to it. Whereas Contemporary War in Squad feels a lot more like maneuvering and strategy and tactics and positioning. When you get down to those huge fronts, those World War II, World War One, massive engagements where you have real armies, not just skirmishes between factions or insurgents, when you have real battlefields and battlefronts developing, these games with no tickets actually do a great job of encouraging that and giving you that experience. So when you're playing Hell Let Loose, or when you're playing Beyond the Wire, because there's no ticket system, there's a ton going on the map. It feels like you're on the front line. It feels like a real war. Whereas in Squad, as you know, because you and I both play a ton of Squad, a lot of it is like, it kind of feels like skirmishes. You're kind of like towing off with the enemy faction, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a war or a front line. You know what I mean? So there's definitely, I think, tweaking that respawn mechanic. I think it really does a good job of accomplishing that feel. So I think one of the games that, or one of the studios that has done this before, is New World Interactive. So New World Interactive made a game called Insurgency, which a lot of players should know, but it was one of the first tactical shooters on PC. And they later went on to develop a game called Day of Infamy, which is a World War II version of Insurgency. And you saw a lot of the same things that we're seeing now with Beyond the Wire happen with those two games as well. Basically, they're taking a contemporary shooter, which was, skirmishing and, a smaller scale, and they made a way, or they found a way to blow it up in Day of Infamy to create a frontline Battlefield-esque game using the same elements or the same core as Insurgency. So I think this is really interesting to see happen again with Beyond the Wire and Squad, just because it's really cool to see how using roughly the same tools, you can get an extremely different gameplay experience by tweaking just a few things. So when people look at Beyond the Wire, and you and I hear this all the time in our chats when we're live streaming it, right? People say it looks like Squad. And I can't deny the fact that, yes, there are certain elements within Beyond the Wire that when you look at it, it's going to be, the way you switch weapons, it looks like Squad. The way you bandage someone looks like Squad. The way you cap points kind of looks like Squad. But like I said, those are all the minor UI elements, right? The gameplay, when we get down to the gameplay, the actual meat of what you're purchasing, it plays differently. You're charging almost entirely differently. You're charging the front line. You're fixing that bayonet. You're organizing mass assaults, which you only kind of get in Squad and Postscriptum because AAS or just how big the maps are, you don't really get that experience. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like Invasion in Squad, is because you have the entire lobby, the entire 100 players on both teams all in like one area, and you get that mass war feel. And I think that's maybe why Beyond the Wire has clicked so well with me, is because I love that kind of chaos. I love that environment because it's really, really, really immersive. It's kind of cool in Squad when you're sitting off on a hill and your squad's doing something incredibly useful, but it's only, you're only engaging one other squad and you're doing your job and your tactics help the entire team, but you don't get that insanity, that chaos that you get in Beyond the Wire, where people are fixing their bayonets, everyone goes over the top, gas is dropping down, you've got 25 players on your left, 25 players on your right, and you're charging into the enemy. You don't get that. I can't
wait,
think...
Are you suggesting that you're team stacking because you got 25 on your left, 25 on your right, you got 51 players on your side, Karma? I understand why you won that trench.
51 to 49, man. It's just enough to tip the scales. But that is
you're like it's it, because you feel, even if you when you go over the edge and you do that, and you could end up just being a couple of you're left with your bayonet, your club, you're basically nothing left, and you're the only ones left in the trenches, and you're almost just waiting for your team to get back to you. Where in Squad, you're like, okay, cool, we beat them, we beat the squad. Like, all right, let's move. That was cool. It's and you don't have that front line, the kind of fluidity between you're just a small unit of a greater whole team and frontline. And I think the smaller maps also really help that feel, because a lot of people, that one of their first impressions as well was, hey, the maps seem too small. But that's a really good thing in my opinion. That keeps you all together. But I've found that even if you are pushing together as a team, you can, if you want, do a couple solo things, or do a couple, your squad is only 6 people, right?
Yeah.
So you can do a couple things with just a handful of people and really have some effect. Or you can also unite as your whole platoon or whatever and still have a great time. So it's really interesting how they can achieve this. And I do really think it goes back to just something almost as simple as no tickets.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it has a lot to do with also the weapons that were available during that era. Of course, there's a couple of LMGs and a couple of HMGs in the game, but when you look at the tactics that were used then versus now and the weaponry used then versus now, it's kind of, it's very obvious why mass charges were a thing, right? Bolt action rifles, if you both sit back and you both have even numbers and you're pinging off at each other, it's very hard to get a definitive, territory gain or win a decisive engagement that way. You can really see when you start getting people together and Beyond the Wire and charging lines in mass numbers and seeing how effective that is, because you're going up against, maybe a couple LMGs or a couple of fully automatic weapons, but mostly bolt action weapons. It's really, really clear that bolt action weapons do not do well when you're throwing 20, 30 guys into a trench. You cannot hold that back. So it's real. I want them to focus on that experience. I really do. I would even go so far as to, open up the squads and make them, 20-man squads, or maybe that's a little bit too crazy, but I want to see that focused on. I want to see mass charges focused on, because I think that is where the game shines. Because otherwise, when you break it down, you make it really small, you get the small skirmishes, what you're going to end up having is a lot of people just peek shooting with their bolt actions. And I don't know if that's necessarily
That's not gonna be
new or fun. Yeah, because you kind of already get that in Postscriptum. I think Beyond the Wire needs to double down and focus on what they're bringing to the table that's unique, and that's going to be your charge into melee combat kind of experience. But yeah, what do you think of that specific gameplay flow, that charge into melee? Is that something that you think is that something you expected to like so much? Because I didn't think I'd like it that much.
Yeah, well, during the release, every time I got killed off of an emplacement, someone in chat was like, "La la 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 la, Karmakut just slashed you." Like, thank you. I know, I saw your hat. I saw your SL kit. I saw the saber coming. I could do nothing. The melee, every time you would get in close quarters, I thought I would not like the melee as much as I did.
Mm-hmm.
And every time that I got into a situation where I was maybe closing in, I was like, dude, I'm this bolt action isn't going to work. The pistol's going to take a couple shots. It's only got a couple. Let's just take the club and I can just go in and let's make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that type of stuff. I do think they need to focus on that. And I think right now they've kind of focused on that. And they went real hard into, I never played Mordhau, so I don't know if you played Mordhau, but the Mordhau system of, you can actually angle how you strike someone, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
see it. There's a little radio menu, and you can see an arrow that you can sweep up from like bottom right, bottom left, side to side. Kind of make these large sweeping movements. You can also right click and you can defend and parry or block, or whatever you wish to call it. And I I feel like they try to go hard into that, but then it's almost like they were stuck into two minds. It's like, oh man, are people gonna like this? I don't know. Because I've noticed sometimes clunky might be too strong of a word, but sometimes it feels really clunky, the
It
melee.
feels a little half baked. I'll agree with you
They just need
there.
to go into it, man.
Yeah.
Like, just I almost want this to be, if I'm going in for a club, I'm clubbing that dude.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I if this is I sometimes, have you ever had a dream where you're trying to run and you just can't run? And you're trying to kick a ball and you kind of kick the ball. You're trying to throw a football and you just can't throw it. That's sometimes when I storm the trench and I get out my billy club and I'm a swinging, and I'm still waiting for the swing, and then I missed it, and I'm like, wait, he's right here. And so these are the type of things where I feel like, if I'm really within a couple feet of someone, there should not I should not have the other guy. He shouldn't have a chance to just reload his bolt action rifle 3 or 4 times and kill me. And a lot of times I felt like, while I was still trying to figure out the melee, he was able to take a shot, miss, reload, take a shot, miss, reload. Well, I'm still swinging and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I should be hitting him, and I'm not. And it's almost like, I'm not saying like, Battlefield, they're very big on these melee animation takedowns. And Battlefield 1 also had a bayonet animation takedown. I'm not saying we should go hard into the animation takedowns, but dude, I feel like I'm swinging at air and I'm just missing nothing, even though I see the guy right there a lot of the times. And they just need to go into the melee, like, just embrace it. It's a great part of Beyond the Wire that I haven't seen in another type of FPS like this.
Yeah, so I'll agree with you. Like, there's a lot of times when I'm playing Beyond the Wire and I'm trying to use the melee system, and it's just, I've never struggled so much to get my character to do something. Well, maybe in Tarkov a little bit. I'll have like some weird moments where like my character is doing something he shouldn't be doing, or he should be able to do something like very fluidly. And sometimes when you're in melee combat and Beyond the Wire, it does feel like there's some kind of disconnect between the control input and the actual output you're getting on the screen. I don't know
Yep.
if that's because they're half baked, like they're trying to like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, try to commit to it, or if it's just because, development, they just haven't fully fleshed out the system yet, but they're planning to. Either way, in the current state that Beyond the Wire is right now, the melee combat does feel a little wanting, I guess you would say. It's not terrible. I still have a ton of fun with it, and I would want to get into that into a into a little bit like here. But basically, there are moments where someone's prone on the ground, and for some whatever reason, when I'm swinging, I'm right on top of him. I'm standing on top of him, but like I'm hitting things to the side. I'm hitting the ground. Like it's like
That wooden clanking noise when you hit the thing next to it, it goes thunk, and you're
yeah.
like, no.
Yeah. It's just I think that's a really bad player experience. When you want to do something and that something that you're wanting to do is pretty simple, you should be able to do it without having to fight the game. So I don't know how they fix that, if they make it more fluid, if they fix the netcode. I don't know what they need to fix to make that experience more fluid or more clean. I'm sure they have something planned, but they kind of need to roll that out as soon as possible, because that is like, if that's going to be one of the main features of your game, it needs to kind of work as fluidly as possible. Getting
Definitely.
on into like why melee combat is like so much fun. It evokes a certain emotion. I don't get that emotion in squad. I don't get that emotion in postscriptum. When I knife people in squad, it's like, oh, yippee, I got a knife kill, right? It's nothing crazy. Or when I stab someone with a bayonet in postscriptum, it's like, it's kind of cool. But for whatever reason, in Beyond the Wire, I get that feeling of absolute elation for stabbing someone, for getting into melee combat, more so than in Mordhau anything. I don't know why, but when I charge someone, I have a war cry. Boy, I have a war cry.
You have a war cry.
Yeah, when I'm
What's the war
streaming,
cry? You can't. What is it?
I can't just do it artificially. But I'll notice,
Oh,
like, I'll do it
just
totally
comes
subconsciously.
it's primal.
It's
It just
primal.
comes from within.
It's literally primal. Like, I'll catch myself doing it on stream, where I attach the bayonet and I'll charge at someone, and I'll realize that I'm like yelling. I'm yelling in my room, and I'm like, God. There was one time when I was loading up Beyond the Wire. I looked at the clock and it was 8 p.m. and I was like, I can't play this game right now. I'm gonna get kicked out. Just because it's like, I can't scream this late. But it was like, it really gets me vocal. It's one of the few games that actually gets me feeling a certain way, gets me that excited to where I will scream, I will yell as I'm charging someone. What's your opinion on that? Like, do you get certain emotions in the melee combat? Does that evoke
My
the same
opinion
feeling
of
to
your
you?
primal scream is that the opinion? I need to go back and watch your VODs then to get. I feel like I know what you're talking about, because something deep from within that I cannot control does overtake me when all of a sudden I see a trench and there's people not looking, and I
Yes.
have a club. And I'm like, hey, there's about to be a whole world of hurt in this trench, and I'm the one who's going to be taking care of it. Like,
Mm,
there's something about that it feels great when it works. Oh man, does it work. And it really feels rewarding.
mm-hmm.
And there's I don't know if this is intentional, but part of it for me is the wonky animations after when you whack them.
Oh,
Like, I
they
don't
just
know
go
if that's,
flying,
they
the
go
the
flying.
physics.
You hear the thwack, you see the body, you see the blood, you see, I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's not like too ridiculous, it's within the realm of, like, okay, I get this.
Hmm.
And it's so rewarding when you do it. And I've actually had a couple times where somebody I would approach and I would run at him with a club, and maybe they had a pistol or they had a rifle, and I would take a couple swings with, not, I wouldn't close the gap yet. Every once in a while, yeah, they'll shoot back, but dude, there's one or two times we square up for a duel, and we just have our own little club duel, and
Hmm.
may the best clubber win. And that kind of stuff, like, that's cool. you know like, hey, if he blocks and I get killed, or if I block and I kill him, like, I've been killed and I've been the one killing on both sides of those things, and I have a great time. Those are the type of things that you just have fun in game. And the the main thing that I just wish that I could just I wish I could replicate just the fun every time, because there is that every other time where I'm in the perfect spot and the hit reg,
Yeah.
or whatever it is.
Yep.
And so I really think I just I if I could just have one want for this game, I don't even care about tanks. I don't care about planes. I don't care about zeppelins or whatever the hell we had in Battlefield 1. Just this melee, if you nail it, it is so much fun. And when
Hmm.
you cross no man's land, when you have smoke, because also we're talking about, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but you can call in smoke, chlorine gas, artillery all at the same time. Your infantry squad leader can cause you to run faster. You can charge into the trench, and then you break out your club and you have bayonets, and it's awesome. Like that kind of stuff, you just need to just turn that stuff to 11, and this is going to be a really fun game that isn't just going to be a blip if they really just kind of hone in on these things.
That's what I'm saying. Like the mass charge feeling with an organized front, and going back to squad, that's why I love Invasion, is like having everything in your platoon or in your team working like clockwork. The smoke's dropping right on time. The HMGs are suppressing the right targets, and you get in there with your guys and the guys next to you, and you break out those clubs. Oh, it's just knowing that all those things came together to make a push successful is just so rewarding. But going back to what you mentioned, because I think I have to bring this point up. You're talking about how you love it when you square up with another player. I think I think one of my favorite experiences is charging someone with a bayonet and seeing them run away in fear. That is
Yeah, that's true.
It's so much fun because I have it happen to me where someone's charging at me and I'm racking the bolt, and I just know the fear that like I'm experiencing. So knowing that I can inflict that kind of terror into someone else on the receiving end is just, it's great. And I think a game that kind of does this is like Escape from Tarkov, right? When you die in Tarkov, you have like a really big kit, you have that feeling of loss. You're like, oh god damn, that sucks so much. But when you kill that big dude with that Gen 4 and that fast MT, you're like, oh, I just ruined this dude's day. And I think that's a whole level of enjoyment that Squad and Postscriptum just doesn't even really touch, unless you're like ATGMing like a tank at like 800 meters. But that's a different thing. We'll talk about that some other day. But yeah, I think Beyond the Wire, it's just, oh god, it's so easy. I know it's so easy to viewers or to, you know, people who are watching videos to look at it at face value and say, this looks like Squad and Postscriptum. But god, when I play it, it feels so much different. It feels so much different. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you have to literally play it to experience it, because it is a wild ride. And I'm really excited to see where it goes in the future. But enough about like what we absolutely love about the game. And we have talked a little bit about the hit reg. What are some other things that, you know, maybe don't rub you the right way, or things that you'd like to see improved in its current state?
So right now, real quick, once again, if you guys aren't familiar with the type of game modes they have, I think right now we have, is it Assault and Frontlines? I think those are the two. Assault is basically offensive or invasion, however you want to, whatever games you are. Basically, you have an attacker and defender. And then Frontlines is you have no man's land and then sectors on each side. One side pushes into the front lines. If they capture it, you get to the next, the enemy's sector. However, the enemy, you can retake sectors, you can go back and forth, you can do tug of war. So there's two game modes right now. And I do think that the Frontlines game mode, I would like to see that more. The Assault game mode, I have found it, and I don't want to keep going on the Squad because I know they're completely different. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of that one Trello board key where they're saying, "Hey, objectives are going to now be in the future where if you have more people on the objective, the faster you cap it." And every time I play Assault, I think of that because right now in Beyond the Wire, if you guys aren't paying attention and you don't get any UI notification you're losing a capture point or objective point or whatever you call it, it's if you have like 5 people in that objective and you are just right outside of it, it flips almost instantly. And the capture time, not only are you've lost the sector because the enemy have just captured your zone, you now have to retreat and run backwards. You can't shoot. The enemy can shoot. And by the time you get to your friendly sector, they're basically with you as well, probably killing you because once again, you can't shoot. And they're once again in the sector. So I've found that sometimes these capture areas and the more people in the sector means it caps quicker, can really lead to games that are just you never slow down. You just move forward. You can't stop. Even though you feel as a defense, you look on the map, you see your entire team right next to the objective. But since 3 enemy are in that capture point, you've lost it without even realizing it. And that I know it can be tweaked. I know it's the first iteration. I've really enjoyed Frontlines, but I'm Assault. I've had some not the best moments on Defense, I guess you could say.
Gotcha. No, that totally makes sense. I think I definitely approach each game mode kind of differently, right? So, like for Assault, there's a specific way I play each game mode, I guess is the way I'd say it, to where I know I can maximize the enjoyment. So on Assault, I'm squad leading the guys, I'm leading the charges, pushing them through trenches, getting in the melee on offense. But on defense, and I've always found defense boring, even in squad, right, for invasion. That's
Wait. Mr. Super Fob, did you just say you think defense is boring?
Let me reword it. Since they
Mr.
nerfed super fobs.
Okay. Just wanted that. Yeah, okay.
Since they've added the artillery, defense is really boring. It is, because you don't really have that much movement. You're just sitting on the point. You just shoot guys, right? So same thing in Beyond the Wire. When you're setting up defense, I had one of the games, I think a couple days ago, where I just set up in the HMG and I just mowed dudes down as they were running towards our objective. And that's how I maximize my fun, is usually on defense, I grab an emplacement or an LMG. I set up and I watch something and I play for kills. And that's usually how I get the most enjoyment that I can out of Assault defense, which is not that much. I still think that the attacking side gets the majority of the fun, which is kind of why definitely. I think... Yeah, which is why I kind of think Frontlines offers a more balanced experience for both teams, right? Because it goes back and forth. You get the chance to attack, you get the chance to defend, and it's a more balanced, consistent experience. Going to one of the things you talked about, and one of the things I also absolutely hate, is the freaking enemy frontline, enemy zone exclusion
that you're
radius.
Helpless running away.
Yeah, like, oh god, I know they're using it from like Insurgency, like that's something that happens in Sandstorm too, but I always found that like mode or that way of controlling player mobility like really it's just really obtrusive. It's just way too much. I don't know if there's a better way to do it, but it's just really annoying. Because sometimes, especially like you said, sometimes the front line moves so fast that you're just caught way far behind, to where sometimes I'm like, do I just respawn here? Do I just like admin enter respawn and just kill myself? Because it's like running, why would I run back when I can't even shoot like 600 meters, 600 meters? It's just, it's kind of silly. So I hope they improve that experience. And then going back to the maps, God, Zonbeek is a fantastic map because it amplifies and encourages that kind of get in the trench, get in melee range, charge,
I think
charge,
that's my favorite map right now.
Yeah, Zonbeek is the best. I can't believe out of the 3 maps that we get for early access, one is at night.
Don't say it. Oh, you said it.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
Oh my god, why, man? Why?
Do you like night maps?
No, I hate night maps. I'm 30. I wear glasses. I don't want to play at night, man. I don't even go outside in the real world night.
I think there's only been one instance where I've ever enjoyed. Okay, let's say 2 instances where I ever enjoy night maps. One is in EFT when you actually have nods, and the second is like I think there were a couple of squad layers that had like night, but it was extremely moonlit and you could see fine. Those are the only 2 times I will ever say night maps are acceptable. I don't think they add anything to gameplay. I don't think they're fun. I think especially combined with the fact that night map that they picked to be night has so much foliage.
People were asking me if this was the Vietnam mod. People literally asked me, came in and they said, hey, I saw your video on that Vietnam mod. Is that the mod?
There's so much foliage that even if it was day, there would be a disgusting amount of places where you could just bush Wookie and sit.
Yep.
But now that it's night, oh my god. I mean, I abuse it. I'm not gonna lie. I'll abuse it. I'll run around in the enemy's backline, just prone in a bush. Oh, watch the whole squad go by. Okay, stand up and come in behind and just club them all to death. It's just way too easy to pop out of the woods. And I don't know what they were kind of going for. When you get on the assault layer of the map and you know when you push all the way to the Germans and you have that big open field and then there's some trenches, I think that is like an acceptable area for it to be night because it's moonlit. There's trenches, it's open, there's no bushes. It's completely fine. But everything in that map up until that point is just a headache. It's just a huge headache. I think one of the
Yep.
ways they could change this and have that night aesthetic, but have it be playable, is how they can call in. I think it's got a commander call in the flares.
Those the flares that are currently, if you guys have seen it, is red.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's isn't that just part of the map asset?
I don't know. I actually don't know if someone fires those, if they're commander called, or if they're timed, or if they're. I don't know what it is. But I think that if they want this night map, if they are dead set in keeping a night map in, and it's this one or any night map, especially in World War One, when it's a war zone and you're having a major offensive, those flares should be popping off the entire round. The entire round, it should be lit by flares. And I think that'd be incredibly immersive. You get that night aesthetic, but guess what? Players can actually see. It's not a headache. And I think it'd be really cool, because I don't know if there's any night maps in any game that actually do that. So I don't know. Hey, RSI, if you're listening, that's how you make a unique, awesome night map. Just have flares popping off 24/7. But yeah,
Well,
dude.
on that, like I actually think that one's called Anson Court, I think, right?
yeah,
Anson Court should actually be in the daytime. You should, if they wanted to do a night map, Zonabrook could be night with those flares. And because of how and moonlit and flares and stuff, that would actually look good, because you have the rolling hills with all the trenches, a lot of open space. But when you add, I will give them credit though. If that map was in the day, it'd be fun.
Yes,
right?
I would agree
Because
completely.
it is a really unique. Can I say? No, I can't say theater. It's on the same theater. It's a really unique landscape.
Yes.
And the type of, you don't think World War One immediately when you see Anson Court, but there's still trenches, there's bunkers, there's defenses, there's lines, there's all this stuff. You got the flares popping off, all this stuff. You're like, okay, yeah, no, I totally believe it, and it makes it like each map. Yeah, it's all World War One, but they're all pretty different, and they all kind of flow a little bit different. And just, dude, don't make it night, man. Just don't make it night.
On that note of like how they're all different, like I think they've also done a really good job there. Every map, for better or worse, feels very different from one another.
Well, okay, real quick, what rank them?
So it's very, very, very obviously for me is going to be Zonbeek for the charging, into Freeze, into Anson Court, right? Just because I hate night, but I love the CQB, so that's very simple for me. What about you? Like, is that roughly the same for you?
I think, is it Zonebeek or Zonebeck?
I don't know how you pronounce it.
Okay,
I'm an ignorant American. I don't know.
Yeah, I even added in like a Zona Brook or something last time I said it. Whatever. Yeah, I think Zonebeck is probably, it probably just edges out Freeze, but it has to be front lines. Like front lines, I'm not saying Assault isn't bad on Zonebeck, but front lines, you actually feel like you're progressing into their trenches and into their back lines. Whereas Freeze, you're like, okay, I'm now in a town, which isn't a bad thing. It kind of, I like the hills, I like the little farmland. It's the bridge at the end of the French headquarters is super fun to play around, in that whole little town. But I really feel like, I thought the trenches would all be the same. They're not. And Zonebeck does a really, really good job of having each area still feel trenches, but still feel different and still feel fun. And it's fun. Yeah. I can't think of anything. Is there something that when you looked at it at all, where you're like, man, I really wish, okay, we're not going to talk about the night and obviously a lot of the foliage, right? Is there something you wish they had, or are you pretty satisfied map wise?
I will say that one of the first things that I said when jumping into Beyond the Wire was, God damn, their map design is amazing. Like, it feels livable. It feels it feels like it was a real place. Whereas compared to Squad, it's kind of, I don't want to dig on Squad, but some areas in Squad, it just feels like, okay, they kind of just went over with a broad stroke and added a couple assets there, a couple assets here. Here's the same generic, but like, every game on the Off-World core that has come out after Squad has had better and better map design. I don't know if that's because these guys are learning. I don't know if that's because, I think partly in Beyond the Wire specifically is because the map scale is smaller, so they can put more attention to detail because the maps are much, much smaller. But Like people love that, especially looking at like Hell Let Loose that has like so much detail on their maps. It's amazing to see, and it makes things feel a lot more believable and realistic, and it just much more immersive. That's the word I want to use, immersive. So
Definitely immersive.
yeah, so looking at the three maps we have right now, they're very high quality. I'm not saying that Onsen Court is like bad because it's a bad map. It's bad because it's night and because it's
Yep.
night plus foliage. But you fix, one or two of those things, the map itself is amazing. I think they've done a really good job of giving most of the maps, aside from Freeze. I would put Freeze as far as the ranking for like the linear or like the, I guess, narrative. I don't know if narrative's the right word, but like progression. As far as like the progression of the maps, Freeze is at the bottom because, like you said, it's like you go from swamp to town to like bombed out hill to bridges, I guess, bridge city.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Which is like it's kind of cool, but it's nothing crazy or it doesn't really feel new. It's pretty, it's good, but out of the three, I think it's the worst. Zonbeek does a really good job of giving you that middle no man's land, that bombed out city in the center, and then either direction that you go, it's like you're fighting through the actual trench line further and deeper in until you get to the HQ. Onsen Court does a really good progression where it's like you start off in this jungle-ish. I can't even recall what the actual like zone or I don't know what the actual biome is because it's so freaking dark. I can't even take a look at good.
I think it's supposed to be like the forest in Belgium or something,
Is
right?
it?
Like
I
it's
get like
supposed
this
to be
tropical feel.
exactly. Yeah, dude, it looks like you're in Cambodia, like
Yeah.
or like yeah, it is or the Pacific.
Yes, the Pacific. I was going to say that. It feels like you're pushing through some Pacific islands like in World War II. But it does this really good job where it's like, it's trenches with emplacements and bunkers in this kind of like really foresty area or jungle area, and then pushes out into that open terrain where it feels like you're getting into their lines, you're getting into their HQ. So I think Zonbeek, then Onsen Court, then Freeze. We're butchering these names, I'm sure, but
Yeah, sorry, Europeans. We apologize.
yeah, but that is like, as far as progression goes, if I were to rank it by progression, that's how I'd go. The issue that I have with Freeze is that it plays too much like Postscriptum. Postscriptum plays a lot like peek, shoot, rack the bolt, peek, shoot, rack the bolt, and just progress up the line like that. And I get that feeling from Freeze a lot, just because it's so open. There's not
That's
too much
true.
cover. There's not a lot of trenches except for that one hill. That it's very shooty. And while the shooting isn't bad in Beyond the Wire, the melee and charging is better. So I get more fun out of that. So that's why I like charging the trench lines on Zombeek more. And that's why I kind of rate it my number one. So Freeze is cool, but I gotta say, like, I don't know what it is. It's very satisfying, but I get kind of bored shooting in Beyond the Wire after like a couple games, just because there's nothing really new there. It's still satisfying, but I don't know. What's your thoughts? I know we've talked so much about the charging and the melee. As far as the gunplay, do you find it to be too similar to Postscriptum? Do you like it like that? Do you wish there was something more, something different that they could do?
So what I definitely do like, and this isn't necessarily gunplay. I will speak that in a second, but the way that they break up your squad into specialty squads, I will say I do really enjoy that.
Mm,
And so you can actually create your heavy machine gun crew, your artillery crew, that kind of stuff. And that's something if you've strictly played squad, if it's literally a sandbox. If you create a one man spandrel crew, you do that. If you create 9-man infantry or 3 people do a tank, you can do whatever you want because you just label it and you grab the asset. Not like that here. I like that aspect, but yeah, it's funny. Like the classes themselves, I actually really like playing. I don't like playing the bolt actions as much as I like playing the pistol and the club.
gotcha.
And the bolt actions, I do think that I've played Postscriptum quite a bit, but I never really played too much of it. And I will say that the manual bolting that they have as well, I really like that feature, being able to not just be stuck in an animation. So I like that. It feels responsive. There's something. Say what you want to say about the shooting aspect of the game, but it does sound good and it does feel good. But if you're just shooting on those maps with a bolt action, you kind of don't want to do that. And you get, as you said, you get kind of bored with that. And so it's the whole aspect of, honestly, if I'm taking a shot in Beyond the Wire, it's like I'm taking a shot more often than not just because I want to maybe get his head down or take someone out who's literally just out in the open in no man's land. But I almost always, the moment I spawn, if I have a rifle, I put the bayonet on and I just start pushing to a trench. And I don't, if I just had to play with the guns, I don't know if I'd play it as much. And the once again, the pistol, the ruby pistol is super fun to play. However, I do think they have like some insane kicks, and
Yeah.
the handling itself, it feels like if I was a child and I was learning how to shoot a weapon sometimes,
Yeah.
because your character, it is as the Luger as well emphasizes this, because not only does it kick, but then when you've shot everything in the Luger, the action, everything is up in your face. So
Yes.
it's all, and it's almost like you're literally holding everything just right at your nose. And I'm sure there's some growing pains in how they model this or whatever, but it's that kind of stuff. I enjoy the game so much that I can look past that, you know? But
Yeah.
I'm still seeing it. You know, I'm still seeing it.
I will say, like, I used to think, like, when I picked up the game and I loaded into my first few matches of Beyond the Wire, I thought the pistol was overpowered as hell. Because he's running in there, just snap, 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 especially that pistol with the drum mag, right? And the issue was, eventually, I'll start going, like, I can't see anything. This thing is taking up
Yeah, yeah.
2/3 of my screen, and the recoil is insane. And that's why I started to realize, like, hey, bayonets and melee combat, that's where I'm at. If I'm doing CQB stuff, like I'll use the rifle for long range and then push in. Once I get like 10 on in, like I'll just snap one shot with the bolt. If that misses, I'm coming for you with the bayonet.
Yep.
Like I'm
No,
not.
and that's how you should. I think that's why I'm okay with it not being as smooth, you know? Like I'm okay, and even with the assault class with the pistols, I do like playing with the pistol, but I like it more because I got smoke, I got grenades, I can keep their heads down, I
Yes.
can push
Yeah.
them, I can get up close in their face. Like that kind of stuff is really where we've said it throughout the whole podcast, but it plays so much different than any of these other games on this OWI core, because of the in your faceness and how rewarding and how you feel when you do that. That I just They just need to focus on that, and I think it's gonna fix, not necessarily fix, but you're okay with some of these, other lackluster things, because if this was just a bolt action game like Verdun or something, I don't think I would have played it as much.
hmm Like going back to what you're talking about, like how many players, like it's so different. It was really funny and really interesting to see, like day one, day two of early access release. What you would see is two players get point blank with one another in the trench and continuously try to snapshot each other with their bolt action rifles instead of
Yeah.
trying to just club them. You would end up seeing these hilarious fights in the trenches where you just have two players point blank missing round after round after round. Where it's like just pull out your club and start swinging, dude.
Yep.
It's so funny. And of course, like it's going to be really interesting because that's a whole different thing to talk about as far as like the meta and how players play the game. That's going to change how the game feels as well. Because I'm sure like the more people realize how to charge, and oh god, that's a whole thing. I remember teaching people, like people didn't know how to bayonet charge. That's something that they got to figure out. It's like how to teach people how to do these things. But like there
Yeah.
were so many people who just didn't know how to bayonet charge. So seeing the player base as a whole develop new strategies, learn how to do things properly, and get that meta developed, that's going to be a whole nother time as well to like look at Beyond the Wire and analyze like how it feels as a game, because we're only like barely a week in, maybe, you know, give or take a couple days here. It's gonna go pretty far, and I'm sure there's gonna be some kind of competitive scene, and they're gonna come up with all kind of crazy strats. There's gonna be a lot in this game that gets unpacked over the next couple of, I guess, weeks or even month here.
Yeah, so with that, is there anything that would, if let's pretend we got an update coming in, by the end of the year. I don't know if we do. I'm sure the devs have said somewhere that hey, they're working on things what would you like to see to say, hey, I spent 35 bucks on this. This is, I like the base, but if in 3, 4 months I don't see something moving in a certain direction, I'm not going to lie, I might be a little disappointed.
I mean, you and I have hammered this point down like throughout the entire episode of today. It's they need to focus on just making that charge experience as consistent and as fun as possible. I don't think they should be wasting too much time adding, other things to the game and spreading out too wide. There's a couple of really important things that, or, changes that I think they could add right now that would improve the experience overall. Number one is I'd like to see some kind of change to the squad size. I like
You don't like six?
I don't like six. I don't like six. I like how you said and how the game is right now where you have squads broken out by tasking. So HMGs, your field guns, your recon, they're all split out. But for your infantry squads, I think that bumping that up to like 10 to 20, anywhere in there, is great. I know they have a lot of concerns with like overwhelming squad leaders, but I think the issue that you see in Beyond the Wire and even in squad in general is I think there are more incompetent squad leaders than competent squad leaders. So I think that
Whoa,
the fewer
whoa. This is groundbreaking statements coming to you live.
it's harsh. It's harsh, but that's the truth. I think that if you put a couple of key strong squad leaders per team, rather than have what is it with 6-man squads, rather than have like 9 of them, 8 of them, if you have like a couple of key shot callers calling the mass charges, I think you'll get a more consistent mass cohesive experience out of it. Whereas like right now with 6-man squads, you're kind of incentivized to do things in those small groups. I don't think it lends itself to the mass charge experience of World War One.
I think that would be real. So you would turn it into, let's say we got 50 people on a side, right?
Mhm.
So we would have 2 or 3 just 10-man, 15-man infantry squads.
Yeah. And that way you can get a solid push going with enough people because like they talk about it and everyone thinks that like overwhelming squad leaders is a big problem. But the issue is like the more squad leaders that you have, the bigger problem of having competent squad leaders, that starts to become a bigger and bigger problem. It compounds, and when that starts to happen, what you end up getting is squad leaders who don't know what they're doing, and you end up having infantrymen just going off, just doing whatever, right? Because they don't have an SL that's telling them what to do, and then that entire mass charge experience that almost becomes unobtainable because you have SLs that aren't relaying orders or aren't leading their guys. And in a game like this and squad and postscriptum, you need to have squad leaders that are on the ball, because if they're not, the gameplay experience that you're going for, you might not be able to get just by having gameplay features. You need to have that social component to organize it, and you need to give these leaders the tools and the framework to do it.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And it definitely would be it's funny because I'm sure the devs, they're probably watching chats or watching streams or watching videos, and hopefully they take a listen to this. I'm sure they're like, oh, you guys aren't game designers. But it's really interesting when you get something that is such a new idea, even though it does look like squad, and when you actually put it in the hands now of thousands of people being critical and actually playing it and experiencing it. I do really hope they look at, the past week, and I can genuinely say I've had a blast playing this. I
Mm-hmm.
think it has a great foundation. I do think some tweaks are needed, and I would be 100% on board with, hey, so we don't know if this is going to work, but for a weekend, we're going to just have 10, 15, 20-man squads. Can you guys go see and break it or make it great or something like that? And just, we this is the time
We're in early
where you
access. This is
actually
the
try.
time.
Yeah, you need to do it. This is the time. You need to focus and just try to see what works and what doesn't, because when you try to create, as we said at the very beginning of this podcast, when you're creating this whole war for the greater good, I guess, for your team, and just rushing and taking something, really splitting that up into 6-man squads, it does take away a little bit of it. And I don't know about you, but if I heard someone in local chat just say, "Hey, take out your club," it's like, okay, screw it. I'm taking out I'm bayonet. Hey, let's all just go. I heard a whistle. Who cares? Let's just go. Like if you can get that type of mentality and that type of gameplay loop, I think people are going to respond really, really well to this game. Even if by the end of the year we don't have the British or if we don't have a new map, if we can focus on that type of positive gameplay improvement, I think people are going to be genuinely happy about where the direction this game's going.
Yeah, most definitely. Because, like you said, there are, World War One games. There's plenty of games before, I think, 2018 that kind of had the same setting, right? World War One, World War Two, contemporary warfare. The difference that OWI and Off-World Core has and the community that's built around it is the organization and the communication, right? Because there have been plenty of games that focus on these eras. There's countless. But the difference is that the Off-World Core games and the community that plays these games is so focused on organization and communication. You need to keep that alive because that's what makes these games so unique. Like, Squad is not just Call of Duty. You don't just have individuals running around shooting things. It's very, very different when you have that social aspect. And if you can get that to translate and Beyond the Wire, it'd be so powerful. When you have that social aspect of a single individual or a couple of key squad leaders on a team organizing everyone to do something, to use teamwork on that mass 50-player scale for your team, that is like one of the most unique things about these games. That is what is absolutely critical to continue promoting and encouraging. And there just needs to be the tools to do that. But 6-man squads, I'm telling you, is not it. It's just not it. But yeah, any other features that you think, like, are you excited about tanks or no? It's like, is any things that you want added?
I mean, like it's tanks. Like I'm not gonna lie, I would love to see one of those was a Mark 4 tanks, Mark 6 tanks, whatever they are. Like I mean, those things just look like machines, man. Like I love playing them in Battlefield 1, but I don't care. I'm having a great time with infantry. I'm
Mm-hmm.
having a great time. I really think you can add things from the command point of view and being able. I do like how the commander has control over this little telephone and can call in things directionally and area, and you can call them all at once. I mean, I really think they need to focus on that type of stuff instead of adding a tank. And the what I would hate, and we were just saying about how, if we're breaking it down to 6-man squads, you lose the aspect of the team. If we break it down and you add a tank, you're now focused on the tank and not the team. And I don't think a tank would necessarily be a bad thing. I just don't it doesn't fit the same flow that I've been feeling. And I feel like it would almost take away of my current enjoyment of the game because dude, I just want to run in and beat some people over the head with a club. And now I got to deal with this tank that's probably camping 700 meters away. And my two AT people are stuck behind enemy lines, not doing anything. That's
Yeah.
I would hate for that to turn into Beyond the Wire when it can really be so much more if you just stick with infantry.
Mm-hmm. That would be my kind of advice to RSI is just like focus on what makes it special. You have something right now that already sets this game apart from others. You have something that draws people to the game, but it needs to be focused on. It needs to be pushed and promoted and encouraged because if I can totally see RSI getting baited into just dropping content
Don't
and
fall
just
for it.
yeah, don't fall for it. Focus on what makes the game unique and improve it and perfect it. But again, just adding a new weapon for the sake of a new weapon, adding a new tank because of the sake of a tank, like I'm not for that. I don't think that would be a good idea. I'm not for content just for content. Improve the gameplay experience. Focus on the gameplay primarily, and then content secondary. Just because in the earliest stages right now that Beyond the Wire is in, that's the most important thing.
Definitely. So what's your verdict? If it's right now, I think it's $34.99 on Steam. Do you think it's worth it?
I personally think it's worth it. I know you and I have talked about this briefly. I have this really weird way that I value my time and money. Usually when I have to make any kind of entertainment purchase, I'll base it off of a movie ticket. So 15 bucks for a movie ticket. I expect an hour and a half roughly of enjoyment. So I've gotten 20 hours of enjoyment out of Beyond the Wire so far. I personally, even in its most basic state right now, have gotten my money's worth. So it's only going to get better from here. It's early access, so they should keep developing it. It should pretty much only get better, hopefully, unless they do something crazy, like add a whole bunch of meaningless content for content's sake.
Tanks. Only tanks.
But I think it's worth it. It gets a recommendation from me. What about you?
Yeah, I think I agree. You know, it's 35 bucks. I know to some people that's a lot of money. To some people that's not. It's obviously not AAA priced because it's not AAA and it is just out of early access. But I think it's not only worth the 35 bucks of enjoyment that you'll get from it, but I also see it as like a buy-in because I believe what they're doing. I
Mm-hmm.
believe in what they're doing, the foundation that they're building. I got it. You know, I feel it. I want this just to be more this. And that's the type where I feel completely good in paying 35 bucks, not just I think I also have 21 hours or 22 hours in this game already, which is, you know, half of a work week just playing this game. And it's a price point that I feel is reasonable for early access, but I know from what I have seen, because this is now we're now I think officially when this releases 7 days from its official release. Like I believe that they can take this and keep improving on it, and I think 35 bucks 100%. I That's a recommendation on my end as well.
Yeah. And like you said, it's an early access game. They're not even done. They're not even done. So you're
But
going to get a lot
Karma,
more.
it's on Steam.
I know. Here's my advice. Play it, buy it for $35, play it for less than 2 hours. You don't like it, Steam refund it. Boom. Top 200 IQ. That's what you do, and then you're guaranteed some value out of your purchase. So try it out. If not, keep your eye on this game. I believe it's got potential. I think that 100% this game is going to be something in, you know, whether it be the next couple months, whether it be a year out from now, this game is going to be something. It has potential. I see it. I'm praying that RSI puts development time to where it's needed the most and focuses on what makes the game special.
Yes, differentiate themselves from Squad because it is very not Squad. And if you guys play it, I think you'll see it and you'll feel it. So I 100% agree. I'm looking forward to the future. Hopefully by the end of the year, we can look back to this and say, yeah, see?
Yeah,
They
hopefully we can
listened.
drop an
They
I
stuck
told
to
you
their
so.
guns.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in for episode 2. Next week, we're going to be talking about Hell Let Loose, Postscriptum, the differences between the two, what we think are some cool features that should have been added, the tragic story of Postscriptum and how its numbers have dwindled and how unfortunately it's gotten to that spot. It's down. It's maybe not dead.
Is it down? No, it's not dead.
It's
You know
not
why?
dead.
Because it's a zombie. It's back. It's the living dead.
That's
Because did you know you thought Postscriptum was dead.
it's undead.
It breached its hand through the ground. It dragged itself up from the deep, and it is alive in Chapter Z, the bloody undead.
That's
We'll
completely
talk
true.
about that.
What
We'll talk about
timing?
that.
What timing? But yeah, we'll talk about the new Chapter Z release, which just got teased from Periscope Games. A lot to talk about regarding all those 3 games, and that's going to be a pretty beefy episode as well. But Moi, once again, it's been an absolute blast, having a lot of fun. Where can people find your content?
You can find me streaming on Twitch Monday through Friday at twitch.tv/MoiDawg, and I also upload on YouTube at youtube.com/MoiDawg. And you? Sir?
Well, yeah, youtube.com/Karmakut as well, and maybe some casual streams, twitch.tv/Karmakut. But that's pretty much it. God, I had a lot of fun this episode. It took a little bit of a build up here, get my brain awake.
I'm telling you guys, Beyond the Wire. It's
Beyond
fun.
the Wire.
It's fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. I've had a lot of fun. Anything else, MoiDawg? Or
I am so excited to just rustle everyone's feathers next week. It's going to be a good one. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time on Command Comms.